Welcome to another edition of Labor Vision Podcast. I'm your host, James Dennis. America Workers First and Labor Vision presents the 2020 Vision for Labor. Goal is to engage, educate, and energize all of our listeners and viewers. Every Friday, there will be a new podcast and a new YouTube video. So please like, subscribe, and share. I'm with my co-host, Charles Daniels, president of Local 4123 CWA. How you doing, Charles?
I'm doing fantastic. Thank you very much. I'm really excited for this episode. This is something that we don't normally get to talk about, so I'm very eager to see how this all interacts with labor and to get to talk about those subjects. And all politics is local politics, so really excited.
So our special guest here is running for Oakland County Prosecutor.
That's correct.
And she has been endorsed by Wayne County Prosecutor Kim Worthy, Attorney General Dana Nessel, SEIU, the Carpenters Union, the Iron Workers, Local 25, and my co-host of Union Members Radio, Keith Combs, Local 295 of the American Postal Workers. Welcome, Karen McDonald.
Thank you. It's great to be here.
Great, Karen. So why are you running for prosecutor when you once was a judge?
I was. So I stepped down in April. I was an Oakland County Circuit Court judge, and I was elected in 2012. Prior to that, I was a shareholder and partner at a law firm in Oakland County called Jaffe. So I was in private practice. And before that, I was an assistant prosecutor in the Oakland County Prosecutor's Office. And I spent about 7 years prosecuting child sexual assault cases.
Can I have some of your resume for mine?
I know. I should have done more with my life.
And I actually didn't even mention that before I went to law school, I started out as a public school teacher, so I did that for 3 years. So I'm a former union member, very proud to be.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
She's got the job that I've always wanted, a school teacher. That's one of the greatest jobs in the world, to me, personally.
I agree. It's one of the most important jobs, but it's also one of the hardest jobs. And I've had a lot of jobs. And I'm telling you that being a public school teacher is very challenging.
But rewarding.
Very rewarding, yes.
Yes, absolutely.
But, teachers in this state are underappreciated and underpaid, in my view. But that's probably a topic for another podcast.
So, absolutely. We'll bring you back for that one.
Okay.
So let me ask you this. Being a judge, you could have stayed there a lifetime.
I could have. And I think that's probably the most interesting and compelling part of my whole path that people sort of perk their heads up about. There's never been an incumbent in the Oakland County Circuit Court who's been beaten. So I could have had and stayed in that position, likely that for the rest of my career, retirement age 70.
You gave up security?
So I had to step down a whole year.
It is.
Exactly. It is a great gig, actually. And I enjoyed every day I was a judge. And I have tremendous respect for my fellow former benchmates.
Yes, so do we.
Absolutely.
But the law says that because you're a nonpartisan candidate and elected official as a judge, if you want to run for a partisan seat, you have to step down a year ahead of the filing deadline for that seat. And I want to run and am running as a Democrat. So I've been a lifelong Democrat, and so I had to step down a year ahead of the filing deadline, which means that you're leaving a job, a very well-paying, great job.
And the uncertainty of running for an office that you may or may not get.
Exactly.
Well, wait a minute. And then you're leaving a year with no pay. Because you can't claim unemployment.
Wow.
I'm just.
Now, I have a law license and I am practicing some law.
Oh, absolutely. You got to eat.
I got to pay my mortgage. I have kids in college. But ultimately, I've been spending most of that time forming my campaign and spending it talking to people like you, community groups, about the reason I did what I did. And the long and short of it is that I truly believe that we need criminal justice reform. And that cannot take place without the county prosecutor.
Absolutely.
We have a wonderful state government. Actually, criminal justice reform is bipartisan. There are a lot of Republicans who love it too.
Yeah.
Everybody does. Yes.
Yeah.
We want to reduce incarceration, all the while, of course, keeping violent criminals in prison. but we want to give everyone else an opportunity to address the issues, the underlying issues that brought them in the criminal justice system.
Got you.
And in Oakland County, our current prosecutor does not even participate in treatment or problem-solving courts, which means, we have the drug court, and we didn't even have the opportunity for our prosecutor to sit down and talk about how to participate in it. When the current prosecutor took office in 2008, she refused to participate. So the law actually had to be rewritten on an emergency basis to allow us to have a treatment court, because our prosecutor wouldn't take part in it. So there's just a general philosophy that you need to be a progressive prosecutor, which is what the county wants, that's what the state wants, that's what the movement is. And it's that let's try to figure out jail alternatives for nonviolent criminals so we can address treatment, we can try to make things better so that we're not just incarcerating for a short period of time, releasing them back into society with less resources.
Right.
They've lost their job. They may have lost their home.
Right.
And now we're less safe, and the instances of reoffending are much higher.
Right.
You're just creating career criminals, essentially. You're not fixing the problem in any way whatsoever.
On the public's dime.
Yeah.
The average cost of a stay a year in a county jail is about $32,000 to $35,000 a year. When you talk about prison, it can range anywhere from $40,000 to $70,000 a year. Look, it's easy to walk around and say we have to be tough on crime, but it's just not smart. It's 2020. We need actually to be smart on crime. And I believe that's the prosecutor's role. I believe it's the prosecutor's role to care about who they're prosecuting, and also to be transparent in who they're charging and who they're convicting. Because just in the small amount of data that I've have access to, which is not provided by the prosecutor because they're not transparent, the drug convictions, just one example, for people of color are about 30 to 40% higher than white people. Well,
right.
we know from the science and the statistics on this that people of color do not use drugs more than white people.
Sure.
So why are they being convicted at a higher rate? And look, I'm going to do everything I can to move that so that we are fair and impartial. But you can't change anything if you're not even willing to ask the question.
Right.
And that's a question not being asked right now by our current prosecutor. And Oakland County is one of the wealthiest counties in the entire country.
That is true.
And we have resources that most people don't.
Yep.
So the fact that we don't have a county prosecutor who's invested in really trying to create treatment courts and problem-solving courts. We have a veterans court. Our county prosecutor in Oakland County, Jessica Cooper, will not participate in the veterans court. And when our chief judge at the time reached out and asked her why, she said, "I'm not a social worker." Well, these men and women have underlying issues because of their time they were serving our country, and they should be treated a little different. Should they be let off the hook? No. I'm a mom. Mm-hmm. I want my kids to be safe. I want to be safe. I am never, ever, ever going to agree that violent criminals should be on the streets. I've spent my whole life dedicated to advocating and protecting kids and families and victims of crime, and that's the job of the prosecutor, and I want to do that. But I also want to do it smartly.
So let me ask you something. You're the new prosecutor. What can we expect from you first 6 months?
The first 6 months, I'm going to begin educating the assistant prosecutors, the fine men and women who serve, about criminal justice reform. I'm going to allow them discretion to examine charges that have been made or whether they should be made, and use their hearts and their minds and decide whether or not somebody should be charged, whether or not someone should be offered a plea reduction. Right now, there's absolutely no discretion in the prosecutor's office, none. Even the assistant prosecutors who are in the district courts prosecuting low-level nonviolent misdemeanors are not allowed to offer any sort of plea agreement whatsoever.
Really?
First and foremost. Second, I'm going to create a hate crimes division where we have a dedicated prosecutor whose job is to evaluate criminal charges if there's any component of of a hate crime because of your race, religion, gender. Third, I'm going to develop a wrongful conviction unit. There are about 50 of them all across the country. One's in Wayne County. And this is just a designated prosecutor with a few people working under that assistant prosecutor to examine new evidence that might be available for past convictions to decide whether or not relief should be granted. It might be a new trial. It could be total exoneration. There was just somebody exonerated in Wayne County that I think served over 30 years in prison and was exonerated because DNA evidence. And when our current prosecutor was asked about this sort of unit or this sort of relief, I think her answer was, well, that's assuming there are wrongful convictions. And look, it is 2020. I mean,
wow, let them eat cake, huh?
Yes, we make mistakes. We make mistakes. Everybody makes mistakes. So
a sign of strength is being able to acknowledge that sometimes you make mistakes.
That's
and
right.
You need to go back and fix them. To just say that we're infallible at the end, that turns off so many people, and it turns into this authoritarianism that no one wants. That's not what America's supposed to be about.
No.
Of the people, for the people, by the people.
Exactly. And I think, just to pivot just a bit, my campaign, that is one of the reasons among many that my campaign has had such success and energy. I have outraised her. I've had a lot more endorsements, and we're talking about an 11-year incumbent, and it's because I want to be a true leader. And I think when people talk to me and they listen to me, they know I'm not always going to agree with everything, that people want or every position, but I'm going to listen, and I'm going to be active in the community in our county. And I think it's time that we get the prosecutor that we deserve in Oakland County.
You are accessible. I'm gonna say that because on Union Members Radio, you came on there like immediately. We
Yes.
talked to you. You was like, "Hey, let me get on," and I think that's very important, being accessible to the people so they can know what your position is.
You're a servant of the people.
Yeah, and I went on your website, and like I said, Kim Worthy. Kim Worthy is a beast. Dana, we supported her as well. The iron workers.
Yeah, and there will be more to come. I mean, I don't say no. When
I know
people
some
ask
people
me
that's
to
coming
speak,
in. Yeah.
I don't say no, and because I love talking about this, and
educating.
I do.
You love educating
I do.
because you was an educator. You love
That's
educating.
right.
There you go.
And I love that there's so much energy around it, and I really feel from the moment I decided to do this, which was, there's no mistake, it was a big, huge step, but I have felt good about it every single day. You just get that feeling where you wake up in the morning and you're doing the right thing or you don't. And when you don't, there's two types of people in the world. There are people who are saying, I'm going to make a change. And there are those that say, I'm good. And I just couldn't stand by anymore. I wanted to do something that made me feel like I was really doing everything I could to really make a positive change. And I believe criminal justice reform is where it's at. You look at the presidential candidates debates, it doesn't matter what kind of elected official, county, state, national, everyone's talking about criminal justice reform. Sure, everybody's talking about it.
Yeah, because once you're convicted, it's almost like you're going to be a career criminal because you don't get the opportunity to get another job because people don't want to hire you. Oh, you didn't do this. It's all the odds are against you. And we really have to stop that. We need to reform people. Again, people make mistakes.
It's true, but rolling it back a little bit further, what about somebody who doesn't necessarily have a conviction but their parents with adult children who have mental health issues or substance use issues, and their biggest fear is that my kid's going to end up in jail.
Right.
Because right now, that is a legitimate fear.
Yeah.
Because we don't have services and resources for people who need help, so that your loved one or yourself doesn't end up serving time in the county jail or in prison. And that is the difference between somebody's a successful life and one that's not. I mean, that, and in some cases that can be a death sentence. So that,
especially mental health. Mental health. That's the one that, because I know we go down to the homeless shelter all the time. And every time we're down there, it's more people there because of mental health. It isn't that they made bad investments. They're talking to themselves. You're going, that person isn't right.
And everybody knows that. So to me, when I have those experiences in my courtroom or in my just everyday life, that is a crushing thing to me. And I can't stand by and just do nothing. Everybody says this. We have a mental health crisis. We have a mental health crisis.
Right.
We do, but let's do something about it.
Yeah. Yes.
Let's do something about it. And the way you do that is by electing leaders that really are energized to actually roll up their sleeves and address it. And let me explain. I'm not saying anything you don't already know. Putting people in prison or jail, not the answer.
No.
Not the answer.
Or putting them on the street.
Or putting them on the street.
Yeah.
Saying it's not my problem.
It can't be fixed
Someone
overnight.
else needs to take care of that. Showing up and being present is the most valuable thing that you can give someone, your time. So if you're not even willing to do that, then you're not helping those people.
Exactly. So let me ask you this. What is your 2020 vision for labor?
So when I first entered the workforce, I was a teacher. And I left the profession because I wanted to change the system. Today, more and more young people are leaving the profession due to frustration, lack of pay, and aggressive testing regimes. Educators are on the front lines, and our kids are paying the price. We have a strong history of making gains for the middle-class workers like this in Michigan, but we're falling behind. We're under attack from billionaires like the DeVosses, who will tell you Michigan workers make too much, and I just don't see it that way. I was out there on the picket line at the GM strike. And what I saw was people working together and trusting each other so that they could make some gains. The result of that strike is pretty incredible. By the end of this contract, workers who make $35,000 before overtime as temps will become permanent employees making $65,000 before overtime. That is a life-changing amount of money and truly demonstrates the power and the necessity of unions. The right to collectively bargain is the best and only way for working people to really get ahead in this country. It means leverage to get what you deserve and secure a better way of life for you and your family. When collective bargaining was under attack in 2012, prosecutors and sheriffs stepped up to defend it and support Proposal 2, but Jessica Cooper didn't even endorse it. I would have done anything I could to support it, and I will continue to do that. That's why we need to elect more Democrats to office in 2020 who are here to be allies in the fight to protect collective bargaining and advance the role of unions and to stand with workers and their families and start investing in a better future. And that's why I'm doing what I'm doing.
Wow, I think she summed it up.
That was fantastic. Yes, indeed. And if I could say just one thing, Jimmy, I'm a simple person. But before this, I went on and I just Googled Oakland County Prosecutor, and I found the reviews for Jessica Cooper's office. And I found 10 negative reviews, all saying horrible things about how they were treated there and just the lack of support that they were given. Now, I understand that it is difficult in that position to get someone to say something nice, but you know what? In that period of time, to not be able to get one person to go on there and say, wow, there's a person here that actually listened to my problems, that did something about them, helped me out, and I just want to say thank you. I think that speaks volumes to what they're doing over there, and you've been embraced by labor, and I think it's because you have that educate, to empower, to create opportunities, and that's what labor needs, opportunities, because that's what stops people from going back to jail.
Charles, you said something that's really interesting. So, and Karen, correct me. So a prosecutor prosecutes, right?
Correct.
So my family member somebody murders my family member. You prosecute that person.
They represent the victims and the people of the state of Michigan.
Okay,
yes.
so you mean to tell me you looked up on Google and you couldn't find anything good, even from a family whose loved one? Come on now. I mean, I want you.
10 one-star.
Let's talk. Let's think. Let's look at this, right?
10 one-star reviews, and the common theme was, I'm upset that I can't leave a no-star review.
I'm not surprised. I'm really not surprised. And that, you're not gonna make friends with people who are charged with crimes, but
the families
and victims, and also, people who mess up and are in the criminal justice system. And I've had this happen in my courtroom. If they're treated fairly, they don't walk away feeling cheated. People want to be heard. They want to make sure their due process rights are protected. Most people believe that there should be consequences for actions.
Sure. Right.
So,
right.
I think that is and I just want to say one more thing before we close. Your members particularly should care about who the prosecutor is.
Yes.
Setting aside violent crimes, which most people can agree on, when you talk about low-level misdemeanors where a license is being suspended or restricted, and then people are forced to drive anyway because they need to keep their job, which is, hey, I want them to keep their job. We all want everybody to keep their job. And then the fines and costs, and then they're convicted and charged of driving while license suspended because they were driving their cars to get to work so they could pay their bills. I mean, that can't be fixed overnight, but it can be fixed.
Yes,
we shouldn't set people up to fail. Good people who make bad choices sometimes should be held accountable, but it shouldn't ruin somebody's life and lead to losing their job, losing their house, losing their kids. I mean, we have to use our common sense, and that is part of criminal justice reform, being smart on crime.
Amen, sister.
Karen, can you go ahead and give us a website?
It's McDonaldforprosecutor.com, and I also have a Facebook and an Instagram. I would love everyone to go on it and like it.
I'll go on and like it. Now, is it a certain code word they should put in? Just Karen McDonald?
Karen McDonald for Prosecutor.
All righty. Thank you, Karen, for a great show.
Yeah.
Charles, thank you for a great show.
Absolutely.
And stay tuned for next Friday for another episode of Labor Vision.
Like, share, and subscribe.
Oh, yeah, you're right. Like, share, and subscribe. Thank you all for looking. Peace out.